Hey there, kings and queens, and welcome back to another episode of Faith Helps Podcast. And if this is your first time here, what up, though? And if this is not your first time here and you're just returning and you have been a faithful listener, thank you. You are appreciated and you are loved. And if you are a returner, you might be mad. Because I absolutely want to acknowledge, first and foremost, that I completely left y'all high and dry last week. So what happened was one of my very good friends who has been on the podcast before actually came in town as a surprise, just to stay the week with me. And of course we had a blast, and at the same time, in the midst of that, it was just so many things going on. And I started to sit down to do the episode, and I said, you know what, Diamond? You can take a break today. And because I still want to be consistent, we're going to double up, and there are going to be 2 episodes this week. So you guys are getting this episode today, and then later in the week I'm going to release another episode. Probably on Saturday I will release another episode. But I wanted to acknowledge that there were just so many things happening, and I got lost in the sauce a little bit. But there's one story in particular that I wanted to kind of start off this episode sharing with you guys, if that's cool. Cool? All right. So last week, as I was driving to work, as you guys know or may know by now, I'm a commuter, and my commute is an hour and a half back and forth, so 3 hours total, typically, sometimes give or take a couple of minutes a day. And so as I'm driving on this one stretch of road, there's this like land, like just an open field it's on the beltway, so it's just like open fields. And then right after this stretch of open field, there's a ditch, like an immediate ditch into the sunken place. And then on my right hand side, there's no way to like pull over, it's just railing, and there's it narrows into these 2 lanes. Virginia. Anyway, so as we're like driving, traffic is moving. All of a sudden, I see this humongous cloud of smoke and dust kicking up, and like maybe it was about maybe 3 cars ahead of me, and I'm like, what's going on? Immediately traffic, it all like comes to a screeching halt, and cars are swerving, and I'm like, what the heck is going on? I see a car that swerves over into the land area, and I'm like, whoa. Thankfully, the person behind me was just far enough behind that when I had to slam on my brakes, I had enough space to also stop. They did not hit me, and neither did the cars behind them, so on and so forth. And then I didn't hit the car in front of me. Everything was great. And I was just thinking about that moment as I was sitting in that moment, like, wow, had whatever caused this disruption in traffic happened just seconds later, the car that pulled over into that land area literally would have been swerving over into a ditch, if not coming into a like full-on head-on collision, because traffic was moving, full-on collision with the car in front of them. And I was just thinking about, as I was in that moment, I was just thinking about like how good God is, that all of the cars somehow were all fine. Like once traffic resumed, like once everyone, like the dust settled and moved in, every single car was fine. So I don't know what caused the disruption in the first place, but in that moment I was just like, wow, God, like, thank you for your grace. Like, just taking a moment to thank God for his mercy and his grace and his protection. And sometimes when there's so much bad happening in the world, we focus on that instead of focusing on the areas in our life when God did give grace and did give protection. And when he does show his love every single day, sometimes we focus on, oh my goodness, I almost got in a car accident. And that was so stressful. Yeah, you almost got into the car accident, but you didn't. Or yes, you got into the car accident, but you are safe and you still are able to walk away. Or like there is kind of like that cliche statement, things can always be worse. But in all honesty, sometimes we have to think about, where is the blessing in the situation? And sometimes the blessing isn't just for you. Sometimes the blessing is for someone else. Sometimes we're looking at our own situations, waiting for there to be our own blessing to receive. Sometimes it's not about you. Sometimes God is trying to bless someone else through you. And we don't always take enough time to slow down and think about that. But as I saw the person that almost ended up in a ditch come back over into traffic in front of me, I got a glimpse of their face. I just like imagined the type of, the intensity of the fear that they probably had, or anxiety and stress and panic that they probably had in that moment. Like I just was thinking about like how, you know, that would startle and rattle anybody. But thankfully we were able to get in traffic, and as we get back into traffic, I'm just like thinking about God's goodness in that moment. And also I just felt led to start praying for the people that were in traffic with me. And as I'm praying, like certain things are coming to mind, and sometimes I believe that the Holy Spirit does give us things or place things on our minds and on our hearts to pray for. And so I just started praying what was coming up for me, and some very specific things related to actually my clients was coming up. And I just like, you know, rolled with it and started praying about it, and praying about certain principalities, and praying against certain principalities and these things. And as I'm praying, my car, this is like at least 5 minutes later into traffic, flow of traffic, my car out of nowhere, with no reason, no wind, there was nothing that could have caused it, goes sideways in traffic as we're full on. And I'm just like driving, had my hands on the steering wheel, it wasn't nothing crazy, it just literally turns like a jolt. And immediately, it happened so immediate, I burst into laughter. Like it literally was like, I'm literally I'm driving and I'm praying about this particular topic, and you know, I'm just being transparent. I was praying about sexuality and certain principalities over that area, and some of the pain and the confusion and loss and grief that's being caused in that area of our society, in the lives of so many people. And so I was just praying about that, and as I'm praying, my car does that jolt, and I immediately just burst in laughter, because I'm like, wow, the enemy really don't like that. Good, I know what to pray more about. But in that moment, I also, as I like burst in laughter, I was like, yo, Diamond, you're a little bit crazy. And at the same time, I was like, no, but it's something, it hit different when you see and feel God's favor on your life. You see, a story that I don't think I've ever shared on this podcast, when my mom was pregnant with me, she contracted chicken pox, which is supposed to be like really bad if your parent is like pregnant with you while you have chicken pox. And then on top of that, my mom wasn't able to eat anything throughout her pregnancy with me, so she was losing an immense amount of weight. Later, as her pregnancy I was coming closer to being born, they were telling my mom that there wasn't a heartbeat and that I was stillborn. And then prior to that, her physician before that kept telling her to abort me. And it was going to be kind of this toss up between either you're going to live or the baby's going to live, but like there's going to have to be a give, like someone's going to have to give. And so those were the reasons, you know, from their clinical, you know, their medical perspective and their medical wisdom, they were telling her to abort me. Ultimately, obviously, my mom did not decide to do that. And even up until the birth, when they're saying like, oh, like the baby's not, the baby's going to be a stillborn, my mom was still like, yeah, no, I'm gonna deliver this baby and we're gonna be fine. And I'm gonna sip this orange juice because that's apparently the only thing I would allow her to drink and take in during her pregnancy with me. And so ultimately, as you can see, bada boom, bada bing, I was born and I am here. And so some people think about, we hear these types of stories and we just go, oh, okay, like, yeah, they got it wrong, or oh, cool. But I feel like when we minimize and trivialize certain things and we simplify it too much, we miss God's grace and his favor in it. God has his hands on his people. And when you become a child of God, when you accept Christ into your heart and into your life, and you believe in him, and you decide, you make that decision, that life-changing decision to devote and give your life to Christ and recognizing him as Lord, there's a shift. And when that shift happens, everything around you has to shift too. Does that mean you're immediately within, okay, the next day you wake up, you're going to be rich and, all your problems are going to go away? No, because we still live here on earth in a broken environment that we were sent here to be stewards of. We were sent here to be the light and the salt of this earth. And there's no point in us being here if there isn't darkness. So sometimes we complain about the problems, not realizing that we were the ones sent here to solve them. We were the ones sent here to bring people back to the light, and recognizing that there is a war going on for your soul. There is a war going on for your mind. There is a war going on for your family and your friends. And if you trivialize everything and you simplify it to just oh, what a coincidence. No, it wasn't a coincidence. It wasn't a coincidence that you didn't get into that accident. It wasn't a coincidence that you were born. It wasn't a coincidence that your mom decided not to abort you. It wasn't a coincidence that you were able to survive whatever trauma that you went through. It's not a coincidence. And sometimes we just trivialize things and we miss God's hand in it, or we focus so much on the negative that we allow that to cloud like the purpose and the things that we go through, and we allow it to cloud our judgment of God. The whole point of the enemy's attacks is to make you look at God in a negative light and to view him in a negative light. Of course that's what he wants to do, because then he just pulls you further away. And sometimes, I'm just going to keep it $1.50. Yes, living a non-Christian life can feel more fun. It feels good to not be accountable for anything sometimes. It can feel good to not have to say no to certain things. Do I want to go to the club every single weekend and turn up and pop, lock, drop, twist it around and bop, bop, bop? Absolutely. But I also recognize, like, okay, while I'm wrestling with this part of my flesh, I'm also an image bearer. We as children of God are image bearers, and so we have to remember that. And so sometimes that flesh be rising up, and I'll be like, oh wait, try to remember who I'm bearing the image of. We were created in his image, and so we were supposed to reflect that. It's not easy, I recognize that, and you're not going to get it right 100% of the time. I didn't get it right this past weekend. But the point is coming back and remembering and trying to do better, trying to remember why you're here, trying not to get caught up in all of the foolishness and losing sight of your purpose, or getting caught up in your pain and your offense to the point that you never come back to God. I'm not telling you to not be upset, angry, hurt, or disappointed or grieve some of the things and the problems that are happening in your life, but don't allow those problems to change your perspective and lose sight of the great and miraculous things that are happening. Sometimes you can be so focused on the problem that you miss the entire miracle that's happening in your life. Certainly I could have been extremely upset and just focused on the panic of my car randomly going sideways. Certainly I could have been like, God, why would you do that? Why would you allow this to happen? Certainly I could do all of that. But then I would be missing, I didn't get into an accident when that happened. My car straightened back out and I was completely safe. I didn't witness or even myself be in a ditch when that whatever disruption happened in traffic. So I feel like sometimes we simplify things, and we need to be mindful to be sensitive to the spiritual war that's happening around us, as well as just being more sensitive to the moving of the Holy Spirit and the attacks of the enemy. Because sometimes you're looking at something as it's just a coincidence, and it's not. It's an attack, or it is God's prompting an opportunity. Some of the problems that you're looking at in your life are actually just opportunities. Sometimes it's an opportunity for you to show up and be the solution to the problem. Sometimes it's an opportunity for you to show up and allow your talent and your gift to be shown, or to be the solution to someone else's pain, or be the solution to a particular community issue that you're seeing that's distressing you. I think I said this before. If you're seeing that something is constantly bothering you, and the person around you or other people are not bothered to the same level, that highlights the fact that you are called to that thing, that you have something in you that's drawing you to it, so that you can be the solution to that thing, and to not get caught up in all the glitz and the glam of just being here on earth and thinking like, oh, I'm just gonna become successful and just focus on that. Success for a reason. Me and my friend Tierney say a lot, blessed to be a blessing. We are blessed to be a blessing. We're seeking financial wealth and growth and wisdom, not just so we can benefit our lives, so that we can benefit the people attached to us, and benefit others, and benefit the community, and benefit those in need. It's blessed to be a blessing, so that we can ultimately point them back to God, so that people aren't looking at us and saying, oh, you did. No. I want you to point back and look back at him. Or the point of you walking in your purpose is that when people see your purpose and your good works, they see, wow. And when I say good works, not just, oh, you do charity, but seeing that you of all people are doing this now, or you who used to do that are now doing this, or you who used to talk like that is now talking like this. That is what pulled people back to God, because then they're like, what's up with that? Like, let me hear a little bit more about this God. Or when I share my testimonies, about dealing with and overcoming suicidality and suicide attempts, it points people back to like, yo, what happened? God intervened like that? Like, he showed up like this? It is all for a greater purpose. We are not here to just be, right? And the things that we're going through is not just something for us to complain about. It's something for us to look and say, how can I be the answer there? How can I be a steward in this situation, or be of service in this situation? And so I just felt like I wanted to remind us that the things that we're here for, the things that we experience, are not always so trivial or so coincidental as one might think or say. Sometimes the things are deeper. Sometimes the things are more spiritual than we think. And we forget that we are not just here to be here. We are here in a spiritual war. And I think that it's important to acknowledge that spiritual war, because I feel like as a therapist, I see firsthand that spiritual war happened the most in people's minds and in their hearts. It happens so much to the point that we forget that there's actually a battle going on, and we try to find substitutes for something that goes much deeper than just the surface. If the enemy can distract you with anxiety and depression and your trauma, and then convince you not to do anything about it, and convince you to just medicate and not process the feelings, or not process the trauma because it's too hard and it's too painful and it's too distressing. Yes, it is distressing and it's painful and it's hard. because you are healing something, you're growing from something, you're learning from something, you're overcoming something. What battle do you know of that you can list to me that is easy? If it was easy, it wouldn't be a battle, right? And so sometimes we get so frustrated. Even in therapy, I see when clients, they get frustrated because they don't want to do something, even though they know it's good for them, and they know that, oh, when I do this, I do feel better, such as like exercise, for example. One of my first recommendations for anxiety and depression is typically 9.5 times out of 10 is, what does your exercise look like? What does your active life look like? And the reason being is because while I'm not against medication, I think it has its place. Sometimes we jump to these quick solutions and these quick fixes, or easier options instead of doing the work. And I think in some instances, medication is absolutely necessary. And I also think in some instances, there are steps that we could take that are healthier for the long term and healthier for our minds and our bodies, that we could take those steps, but sometimes we don't choose them because it requires us to hold ourselves accountable. It requires us to do something that's uncomfortable. If you're not used to working out, for example, it isn't easy to get up at whatever time and go to the gym, or just watch a video and do a workout video, or to go on a walk outside. It would be much easier to just lay in bed and sit in those feelings of anxiety or depression. It's much easier to sit with what you know. The scary thing is stepping into something that you don't know, and that's also what is needed in order for healing and growth and development and change to happen. And so sometimes we think, oh, it's just too hard, or we get comfortable in our situation and we get comfortable in our problems, to the point that we forget that while we are preoccupied with this problem, we are not focusing or functioning as well as we could on our purpose and our calling and our talents and our gifts, and we're not as effective of a tool in the arsenal of God. How sharp of a tool are you for the kingdom? When you say that you want to carry out certain things for God and you want to walk in a certain light, are you doing the practical things to do that? Maybe that looks like, okay, I need to start working out more, because I notice when I work out more, I am able to handle anxious moments better. And I don't become overwhelmed with anxiety, which then prevents me from doing the tasks that I need, which then makes me less available to my family, or makes me more irritable, and ultimately puts you in a position to not be the loving and compassionate or patient or kind or forgiving steward and king and queen that God ultimately created and designed and knew you to be. So that is what I want to leave you guys with this Thursday, is to just think about things a bit more. Don't trivialize everything. Yes, sometimes we can overthink things. That ain't this message. Today's message is think a little bit more, and to be a little bit more curious about certain situations. And when you are seeing problems come up in your life, be a little bit more curious about them instead of just complaining about them. You know, when you experience certain hardships, look for God's hand, mercy, and or grace, and or love, and or intervention in the midst of it, instead of just focusing on what went wrong. Focus and look at what didn't go wrong, and looking at what went right. That's all I want to say to you guys this Thursday, and I hope that you guys have a lovely rest of your week and finish strong. And if nothing else, Love on somebody, love yourself, and remember, faith helps.